Facebook Live, welcome once again from Rythmia Life Advancement Center. Your host on Fridays at 1 p.m., 11 a.m. California time. R. Christian Minson here. Hello, everyone. No one as of yet, so let's just hang out smiling and wait. Oh, there we go. Asen, my trusty watchers, 6 people. Show up. Claudia, hi, Claudia. Asen, hi. Welcome. 11 people. Pip. Hey there, Pip. Let me know when you say hi. Tell me where you're saying hi from. Layla, Karen, hello to both of you. And welcome. We're going to get our broadcast started in just a little bit. Usually wait for about 50 people to show up. And let's see if we can break the record and how long that takes. It usually takes about 3 minutes or so. Pip from Australia. Of course, with a name like Pip, that's an Australian name, isn't it? Layla from Arizona. Karen from Michigan. Rachel. Hi, Fro. I guess you're going to say from. Charleston, South Carolina. Sarah. Asen, I know where he's coming from. London, right? Deborah from Colorado. Excellent. Where in Colorado? That's my stomping grounds at one point in time. Boulder. Boulder's where I was from. Temecula, Rachel. Excellent. That's very close to my just former stomping grounds, which was San Diego, or Encinitas to be exact. He's in London. Perfect. We're at 48, 47. Claudia, North Carolina, right on. 52, we broke it. And right before 3 minutes. Excellent. Aurora, beautiful Aurora. So you know Boulder, you also probably know Littleton. That's where my folks are hanging out, and I go visit there a lot. Look for me out there at times because I do breath work workshops and such. 5-Star Salt Caves, I'll give a shout out to there in Colorado. Look them up, they're great. Anyway, welcome everybody. This is the Friday edition of Rythmia Live, breathwork focus. My name is R. Christian Minson. I am the director of the breathwork program here at Rythmia in Costa Rica, sunny and warm Costa Rica. I'm also a certified transformational breath facilitator and senior trainer with the Transformational Breath Foundation for the last 11 years. I was a former monk, and that's how this topic has come about today. Former monk for 10 years prior to that, about 1996 to 2006. And I'm an international speaker, author of this, contributing author, let's say, one of 40 that contributed to this book, Align, Expand, and Succeed, which is about merging of consciousness and business. A very popular book this week is this week we have a large group of conscious entrepreneurs here at Rythmia, and so they're eating this up. But I want to give a shout out to Jerry's book, Shit the Moon Said. We are officially done with the promotion, the free trips that we're giving out every week. The last person just got it a few days ago. So thank you for all who participated in that. That doesn't mean you don't need to go out and get this book still. A lot of valuable information about Rythmia and your life advancement, and this will send you on your trajectory to get here. So you can still get this book in hard copy or Kindle form. Check it out. All right, so let's see. Laura from Canary Islands, beautiful. Deborah, yes I do. Well, look, all right, great. And anything else? From Esposo, Finland, Satu, hey, how you doing? Good to see you there. Can you tell me if I've won the promotion? Sorry, and if you didn't get notified, you didn't win. I didn't see your name on there, so I couldn't pull any strings either. It was out of my hands. So all good. But there will be more on the horizon. Is a scholarship fund that is starting a Kickstarter campaign for those of you out there who are looking for ways to fund your visit to Rythmia. A possible scholarship works. For those of you who are looking to fund the scholarship fund, meaning add money to it, you'll be able to do that soon. There's also a fund, the Pay Rythmia's Mortgage Off Fund. A lot of people have money and are saying, what can I do to help Rythmia? And paying off the mortgage is one of the biggest things that we can get done here. Tom, hey there, Tom. Hey there, Dio. Deborah, it was a great promotion. I'm happy for all the winners. Excellent, Deborah. And I thought it was kind of fun. I love seeing the pictures of people with their books and their reviews and hashtags there. So mala beads, yeah, here we go. So the topic today, why am I wearing mala beads? Because the topic today is daily life monk style. As I mentioned, I was a monk for 10 years of my life, and that seemed to be a fascination with a lot of people. And I've seen that, why is that? Because, who hasn't dreamed of just letting it all go, giving it all up, the easy life where you don't have the distractions and the daily to-dos of chores and cars and kids and husbands and wives and, paying the mortgage and all this stuff, right? At times, probably all of us have thought, I just love to get away from it all. And so there's this romantic notion that sort of monastic life, becoming a monk or a nun, or going up to the Himalayas and meditating in a cave for the rest of your life, those kind of things are, it is something we want to do, something that can get us away from our trials and tribulations. So some of that's true and some of that's not. And so I thought I'd take this time today to talk about the monastic life. A lot of people have indicated they wanted me to say more about my monastic experience. And so I thought I'd do this today. I'm going to explore some of the myths and some of the realities that this lifestyle gives, and why would it really be important to any of you? What I believe after having experienced the monastic life is it's really a model for a higher age way of living. In other words, as we evolve in society and as a human race and species over time, we will naturally start to embrace this lifestyle as a whole. It won't be this special thing that we go and separate ourselves from society to live. It will be a natural way of living for almost everyone. Check in, Orlando, Florida. Yay, Jive, Filipino here in Calgary, Alberta. Beautiful. Laura's joined. Lila's joined. Greg, Malabi. So Greg is saying the Malabi. So that's what I was saying. As a monk, what do we think? First thing we think is, being spiritual. I want to be spiritual, so let's go out and get some mala beads. That's going to make me spiritual, right? Well, it'll make you look kind of spiritual, but as anybody who's on a spiritual path for any length of time knows that the spirit comes from within. We can really look the part. These beads are spiritual only in as much as what you do with them. If you wear them as a fashion item, they're going to be jewelry. But all traditions, this happens to be an Indian mala, meaning of more of Indian tradition, where there are sets of 12 beads. There's 108 beads total and the sets of 12. And this is significant in the way that they use these beads to pray or do their meditative practices, all right? The same way with the rosary in the Christian faith. You use the beads to help you stay on track with your prayers and do a minimum amount each day. The Muslim faith also has their own version of prayer beads. It actually has, I think, 33 beads, and they're in groups of 11, and there's there's 3 different prayers they did. I actually did a breathwork seminar out in Kuwait last September. And I learned a lot about the Muslim tradition of faith, and I got to say that for the most part, what you hear in the news is just a lot of hype, right? So, you know, our Muslim brothers and sisters are just the same as us. But what I learned is that people are the same everywhere. We're trying to express ourselves freely. We're trying to express our creativity and our own inner voice, and trying not to be oppressed by our religion, our politics, or our culture. And it's the same everywhere. There's just different religions, politics, and culture that seem to be suffocating us. You could say the same in the United States. You know, we're constantly looking for this, you know, ability to self-express against all these structures that try to limit us. So why 12 groups? I'm not exactly sure why the groups of 12, but that was, you know, when we learned meditation practices, we would do 12, and then when you go on to the next level, you wouldn't do another 1 or 2, you'd do a whole nother group of 12 and 12. So I'm not exactly sure of the significance of the 12, so sorry about that. Debbie always looks forward to listening to me. Good. Well, hopefully I got some good information for you today. And so the monastic life, you know, some of the myths, some of the realities of it. This is really, you know, as I mentioned, we have this fantasy. There's a great place to run away to get away from all our stuff. But what, you know, a place where we can be peaceful, be relaxed. And there's some truth to that. There's peace and relaxation available to you in the monastic way of life. But, you know, it's an environment where many distractions are eliminated. And so you are there with yourself. The only place to turn is inward. And so it's an environment that forces you to look at your shit. And this brings up a point that at the end I'm going to tie this into how the monastic life parallels life here at Rythmia. So, of course, everything should revolve around what we're doing here, and that's why I'm sort of using this topic today. 1, because people have requested it, and 2, because it's relevant to the lifestyle here at Rythmia. So, and one of those relevant things is you're forced to look at your shit. Because of all distractions, you can't go to the movies, you can't watch TV. We don't go to the bars or corrals with women or other guys and all that. You know, all of the things that you normally do to distract yourself from looking at what's agitating you, what's bothering you, they're eliminated. So all you have is you, and you gotta face that. Of course, that's the good news. The lifestyle, the cornerstones of this lifestyle are really meditation and service. This is what the whole life was really built around. Meditation as the technique to get you in tune with your higher self, to create your own self-realization, and service to then, you know, improve the world, to help the world in their struggles and needs. So the path was a path of discipline. And the discipline came, you know, most visibly in 4 vows that we took. We took 4 vows as monks, and these were the vows: simplicity, obedience, loyalty, and chastity. Yep. Simplicity, obedience, loyalty, and chastity. Now, you know, the simplicity was there, what simplicity meant, and I liked how our monastic order stressed simplicity over poverty. And what we meant by that was we didn't believe that we needed to be impoverished. Life is abundant. Life is this lavish abundance. Look at the oceans, look at the forests, look at the infinite variety of creatures that's on this planet. Life is this expression of abundance. And so to be impoverished amidst the abundance is really to be out of alignment with life. However, simplicity was this idea of really being comfortable with whatever you had. So my spiritual preceptor, now I should mention, I came from the path that was started by an Indian guru who came to America in 1920, Paramahansa Yogananda. If any of you know Yogananda, give me a thumbs up or some hearts or something like that. Paramahansa Yogananda came here in 1920 to bring techniques of meditation to help us attain these higher states of awareness and our own self-realization. And so, he stressed simplicity. He would say simplicity is like, all right, some people are on board with Yogananda there. Excellent. Simplicity is this idea of being content no matter where you're at. So as this spiritual guru, for instance, Yogananda might have been invited to the palace of one of the Rajas of India, one of the kings, basically, of the region of a region of India, where he'd sleep in a humongous room with the finest satin and cushy beds and servants to bring tea and goodies and all that kind of stuff. And then the next night, he may be traveling to a more remote region, a more rural region of India, where they didn't have electricity. They basically lived in adobe and thatched huts. The place to sleep for the night would be more or less straw with, if there was even a pillow. The food that they would serve would be very meager and very plain. And yet, that you could be, the idea of simplicity was that you could be as content in that environment as you could in the environments of the lavish palace, right? So it wasn't about denying, saying, well, I'm a simple monk, I'm not going to live in the palace, I'm going to sleep on the floor out here. It was about graciously accepting whatever was before you, but if whatever before you was pretty meager, not being all upset, like I deserve more, or I need more, or it's, I'm not going to be able to deal with what's in front of me. Simplicity was also to eliminate distractions, as I mentioned earlier, where our main focus is our own self-realization, and the monastic life was created to shelter the individuals from all of the crap that life bombards us with that distracts us from that path of becoming realized. And again, that's like movies, TV, magazines, the news, paying bills, family obligations, all this kind of stuff. And so it takes a certain amount of discipline to stay on that path, because we are basically addicted to drama. We're addicted to stuff. We're addicted to wanting more, to distracting ourselves, to entertaining ourselves. And when there's nothing to do but focus on yourself, a lot of dark stuff can come up. But of course, that's the purpose, and that's the good news. Let's see, Chuck Hightower. Where were you located geographically during those 10 years? I was located in Los Angeles primarily. The ashram I lived in was Los Angeles, and also in Encinitas, California. So a lot of people, give me a weird look when you say an ashram in Los Angeles, and you got to understand that a lot of times these spiritual hubs are placed in the environments where they're needed most. It's like, you can imagine Los Angeles is a place where a lot of less than wholesome activity goes on, and the ashram, just a few people who are holding down a higher level vibration can counteract a lot of negativity, a lot of lower vibrational energy. So I was located in Los Angeles. It was a great environment because we're on a hill, and literally on a hill 7 minutes from downtown Los Angeles. And from that hill, we could look over the whole sea of humanity. Basically, on a clear day, which wasn't very common in Los Angeles, but on a clear day, I could see all the way to Santa Monica and the Pacific Ocean, which was about 30 miles of distance. And just the sea, and you could hear this rumbling hum of all the activity going on. It was pretty interesting. We were like on this little island of beauty and calmness and tranquility in the sea of craziness, which is LA. So simplicity was one. Obedience, that's one a lot of people have a lot of hard time with, because you had to be obedient to the rules, to the guidance of the spiritual master. And a lot of people seem to have trouble giving up your own way of thinking, right? There's this concept that, it's weakness to give up my thinking and let somebody else think for me. And to a certain degree, that's true. But if you're going to the lengths of joining a monastic order, what you're kind of realizing is, it's just like in any endeavor in life. Let's say there's people that know better than you. Right? Say you want to be a great businessman, right? And you don't know much about business. There's people who know more about business that could tell you the way they think and teach you to think that way, but you have to be willing to think like them. So you have to want it, first of all. So in this case, the spiritual masters would teach you the ways to think, to be free from the bonds of the repetitive cycles of life and death and life and death. And so allowing yourself to let go of your garbage thoughts, mainly if a lot of what you think before you become awakened is a lot of what we think. They say about 75% of what we think is just the same thing cycling in our brain every day in and day out. So we're really learning to replace that. And some might say it's brainwashing, and in a way it is, but in the literal sense that we're washing our brain, that we're cleaning it out, getting out the garbage, getting out all the darkness and the cobwebs, removing all that and replacing it with fresh thoughts, fresh ideas. Of course, this necessitates that you do your homework, and whoever you are listening to is going to be somebody of the highest astute nature. So in the spiritual path, we hear stories of fallen gurus all the time. So you want to be careful, but obedience was one of them. Loyalty is pretty much the backbone of relationship in general. I mean, you can't get anywhere very far with anybody without creating that bond of loyalty. Otherwise, eventually somebody's going to do something against the other, and the worst of that is treachery. So let's see. Just checking in on point. Hi from Canada. Christian who? What do you mean by that, Lisa? And then finally, chastity. And chastity is that fancy word for celibacy. No sex, no relationships with the opposite sex, or no sexual engagement. And this is another one a lot of people struggle with, and probably why 99.9% of the world aren't monks. Because this drive is so strong in us. And the idea behind this is not. I want to make very clear, not that sex is bad or we're evil because we engage in it and there's a There's a time and a place for it, and I have my own views on it. You know, I'm no longer a monk, so I'm no longer, well, let's say, I'm sort of no longer celibate. We'll get to why I say that in a little bit. But the idea here is that the creative energy force, what we're essentially trying to do in our self-realization is bring the energy up our spine and re-merge with the infinite, all right? The idea is that the infinite came into us through our spinal centers, the chakra centers, and we embodied into a physical being. And to reclaim our divinity, we're just reversing that process. Now, the creative energy, all energies come from that same basic creative energy, but expressed in different ways that are different chakras. So this sexual expression of the energy is basically one of our lowest chakras energy. Basically, our first and second chakra is where the sexual energy is expressed through. Nothing wrong with that, nothing bad about that. But what it is our two lowest energy centers. So what the spiritual masters put forth is that that's an expression of this creative energy, and this energy is very blissful energy, so that's why sex feels so good. But if you were to contain that energy and draw it up to the next chakra center or the next chakra center or all the way up to the crown chakra, each center along the way, that energy becomes more refined and more delicately blissful. So the whole idea is that we don't want to expend all that energy at the lowest chakra centers. We want to preserve it and keep working it up the higher centers. Now this, I'm giving you the philosophy from which we lived as monks, and this helped us to, the idea wasn't about sexual suppression, having this energy and fighting with it, and again, feeling like you're bad or you're wrong to have it, but to recognize as this energy came up that it was the creative energy needing expression. And we had techniques to sublimate that energy and transmute it up the spine, and then some of the very basic ways to deal with that energy, which I think ought to be taught to all young folks who are just developing a new relationship with this energy as they come to puberty and beyond, is channel it into creative endeavors, right? It's creative energy. It's the energy of our greatest creation. A new human ultimately comes out of sex. So to channel that into music or art or writing or business creativity, that's why having control over that sexual energy, we can get so much more accomplished in life because we can rechannel that energy into our creative endeavors. So hopefully that's making some sense. If it is, again, give me some thumbs up and all that. Why did you choose no longer to be a monk after 10 years? Check. We'll see if I can get to answer that. That will definitely be the topic of one of my Facebook Lives if I don't get to it by the end of this. So hold on there. Rhode Island's here. Asen, but how did you get a hold of that sexual energy in the first place? Well, you recognize that it's there. It comes up, it's there. So then you've got to, you have a choice. You have to realize that life is a choice. You have a choice to expend that energy, or you have a choice to conserve that energy. And the conserve or transmute that energy. And so if you choose to expend it, it's gone. You've done it. And again, it's not to beat yourself up about. It's not to say that I was bad or wrong. And if that's your choice, if that's your conscious choice, that's fine. Sex is a beautiful energy. But if you're choosing to do something else with it, if you want to hold on to that energy, then you're making a new choice. You're either choosing to channel it into creativity. So you start writing, you start art, you start dancing. Movement is a good way. A lot of times just, weightlifting or doing exercise is a good way to channel it out. Play basketball or soccer, some heavy duty sport that's going to wind you is a good way to channel some of that energy. Or learn techniques that are going to draw that energy up the spine and help you connect with the higher energy centers. And the idea is if you do this, you start to open up these energy centers, the energy is infinitely more blissful as you rise up the center. So it becomes less and less of an issue to express it through the sexual channel, because you'd rather express it through the heart center, through the expression center, through the third eye, spiritual visioning center, because those are just inherently more satisfying and more blissful. So hopefully that explains that. All right, we're getting some thumbs up on all that. Excellent. Thank you. So those are the vows. The idea was really that we're renouncing worldly ways. We're learning that this physical reality is not the true reality. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience, not physical beings trying to have a spiritual experience. So that shifts the paradigm right there. Our foundation of us is spirit. And so the idea was to renounce the world, renunciation, that's the whole idea of monastic life, to not invest our time, our energy, our efforts, our desires into things of the material world, that our whole desire was aligning with spirit. Now some people sometimes took that a little wrong, and it's like to deny the whole physical world, which was one of the occupational hazards I saw a lot, where people would be overzealously, in denial of our physical existence, or rejecting it is probably a better way to do it, or better way to say it. So there's really part of, as I left, my path shifted to not only continuing to work with my own self-realization, but really drawing that into embodied life itself, that our physical existence is as much a part of our spiritual journey as that whole, etheric spiritual part of us. But part of the renouncing the world was really not dealing with money. That, as monks, as renunciants, we weren't paid. We were servitors of God and servitors of the world. So we basically had our room and board paid for. We got our food, we got our room, we had our medical expenses taken care of. But we basically got $40 a month allowance, and that was to buy sundries like toothpaste or soap or toothbrushes, whatever we needed for our personal care. But you can't get rich off $40 a month for 10 years. And that was a raise. When I started, it was $30 a month. And then after about 6 months being there, I guess I was lucky that they made the shift and they upped it to $40 a month, I guess because of inflation. So, am I convincing any of you to be monks yet? It's not for the faint of heart, for sure. So a lot of people wonder what the schedule was. And the schedule, again, is pretty intense. Rising by 5:30, in bed ideally by 10:30, but I'd usually make it by 11:30. But you get up at 5:30, you do an hour of personal meditation. Then you go out and you join the group, and we come together in group meditation for an hour. Then we would go eat breakfast for half an hour, and all of our meals were in silence. So we eat breakfast in silence together. That's about half an hour. Then we'd have half an hour of study period, studying the scriptures, studying any spiritual text that would help elevate our consciousness. Then, let's see, did your family support your decision? Yeah, that's a good question. let me get through the schedule and I'll answer that one. After the study period, we then do our service work. And for most of us, that was administrative work. We were, in this particular order, we were the headquarters for the international body of work which Yogananda set up. So we were really servicing all of the different centers and groups around the world. My personal job for a while was in the internal administration. We called it monks personnel. You roughly equate it to HR, human resources. As basically the human in the human resources department of our monastic order. So, a lot of people think that the monastic life is very archaic, but we're not steeped in the past. We're not progressing, and living without electronics and candles and no electricity and going to the bathroom in the woods and all that kind of stuff. No, we basically lived in a sort of a dorm hotel style facility. There were like 4 rooms to a unit, and one unit shared a shared bathroom and shower. And so the lifestyle goes on. After we would serve, we had an office, we had computers, we had cell phones, all that kind of stuff. So it was a modern operation. Of course, if you were in business and you saw like the age of our computers or the age of our cell phones and all that kind of stuff, you might think that we're a little behind the times, and in that way probably we were, but not so far back that we were riding dinosaurs and things like that. Okay, so we would do our service work till lunchtime. Lunchtime we'd have half an hour meditation for lunch, so now we're at up to 2.5 hours of meditation. Then we'd have a half hour for lunch, again in silence. Our meals were all vegetarian. They were all very healthy. And then we'd go back to our service until 4:30, at which time then we'd engage in more or less mandatory recreation. And there was the idea that we really needed to keep this physical body in shape to help us in our longer meditation endeavors. If the body was out of whack, it was much harder to get into the spirit of things. So our recreation would typically be group sports like soccer or basketball. A lot of the younger ones, as you got older, they might go for walks or things like that. And that, again, was a good way to expend that creative energy, so the sexual drive wasn't so menacingly strong. After recreation, then, the evening would vary from day to day, but basically it would either be an hour of evening meditation or a class, a spiritual lecture, or on Wednesday we would have a 3-hour-long meditation. And then on Sundays was a day of fasting, so we fast all day on Sunday, ideally water or juice. But then we'd have a 6-hour meditation, starting at 8 o'clock till about 4, 8 to 2, 6-hour meditation every Sunday. So that was the schedule. A lot of meditation. We meditate on average of about 4.5 hours each day. And like I said, with Sunday having that 6-hour meditation, we would, and very regimented, very disciplined, and the same thing day in and day out. If you're not somebody who could deal with schedule, with monotony, with things being regular and regulated, the monastic life would not serve you. But if you could, all of that was, again, to drop our defenses, drop our desires for our own way of being, and start to get in touch with that higher self. Now, Chuck asked, did the family support the decision? And it's funny, no. They were very much, they thought it was a cult at first. And, you could understand why. was an organization that wasn't really on the map of major religions, and I think they had, family was fairly conservative. They had their own ideas of what I was supposed to do with my life. Came from a military family. Actually, I joke because I grew up in a military family, and I ended up essentially joining a monastic order as a way to escape that whole military structure and discipline and hierarchy and all that. Only to find that the joke ultimately was on me, because the monastic way of life is probably more like the military than any other civilian endeavor you could do out there. We had a very strong hierarchy. We had, as I said, it was a life of discipline and a life of orderliness. So I had to laugh at myself for that. And that's another thing. If you couldn't laugh at yourself, you wouldn't last very long either. So, Jason, you allowed to use technology? Yeah, we had phones. We didn't watch TV. We Facebook and social media were blacklisted, what they call it, firewalled out, as obviously things like porn sites and other distractive types of things. So Netflix, we wouldn't be able to get, anything that was more entertainment value or distractive, we wouldn't do. But we had cell phones. We didn't have our own personal cell phones, but we had cell phones we could check out if we were going on an excursion and we needed to have communication. We had computers to work on and give emails and communicate with each other. But again, not to go browsing the internet, basically. How do monks have an income able to live? Well, like I said, that we were supported by the organization. We had a $40 a month allowance, but we didn't make a salary. We got room and board, and that's all you need. I mean, if you're not going to buy the latest fidgety thing, or Fitbit, or the latest record album, or what is this thing called, a drone, where all that stuff is just distraction. And so, if you don't need it, we didn't have money for it. And since we didn't have money for it, it kind of forced us not to need it. How long did you practice until the vision of being a monk was clear to you? I was, that's a long story too, but, from my early life, I was a seeker and knew there was something more to life. And then it was about, I don't know, when I got out of college and I kind of hit rock bottom in my life, that I started to find techniques of meditation that were really working for me and actually improved my life. And from there, from finding those techniques to becoming a monk was about 2.5 years. It wasn't my plan ever to be a monk. In fact, the first time I heard about it, I was kind of like, I'll hold off on that. But as I continued to evolve and develop, it became the next level thing. Basically, I've always sought the meaning of life and the purpose of life. And I found, through the teachings of Yogananda that I bought into the idea that the meaning of life is our own self-realization, our own evolution to our wholeness, our greatness as spirit beings. And then he taught that the best methods for, the quickest method for attaining that realization was meditation. And so his monastic path was laid out to provide you ample time to pursue that endeavor of connecting with your spirit and going deeper with these techniques of meditation. And then, of course, that whole other side of it, the service, the taking what you've learned and what you've garnered and bringing it out to the world and helping the world evolve as well. You and Jerry came from the opposite ends of society, but still have common ground in Rythmia. Yeah, exactly. We're, it's a lot like that. Now, there are some similarities in our background too. Before I was a monk, I was a partier in college, and I had relationships that weren't the greatest, and to put it mildly without going into details, getting into drugs and alcohol, mainly psychedelics and marijuana and drinking, and all that sent me spiraling down until, like I said, I hit more or less rock bottom. I used to work in I was a graphic designer in a wholesale factory that sold sex toys. So imagine that. So when I say I'm a graphic designer, I mean I was a graphic designer. But all that, just sunk me lower and lower. And until finally I found something that brought me out of that. And that, for me, in that case, those were the techniques of meditation. For Jerry and Rythmia and a lot of people here, that's the plant medicine and the breath work. And that's why this place exists, is those were indicated to Jerry to be the two shortcuts. And I believe really that they are shortcuts. Meditation is definitely sort of the marathon pace towards your evolution, and something that I believe you ought to employ in your life, keep it, to sustain your upward evolution. But the experience that you can have here at Rythmia through the plant medicine, through the breath work, is like an intensive explosion of consciousness. It awakens you in a seriously quick way. Otherwise, our awakening, spiritual masters say, from our evolution in lives and awakening takes about 1 million years to get from our basic life all the way to our realized self. Whereas, again, with tools like the plant medicine and the breath work, that accelerates that awakening. Now, once we're awake, we have to continue to work with that awakened state. All right, and so that's where meditation comes in, and that's where the sustained ability to stay, in higher consciousness starts to come in, and why we have things like our aftercare program, and why we why we recommend you do things like have a practice beyond the walls of Rythmia and things like that. So, hey, Dave Power, what do you think I would really like, Jason? Did you feel like that becoming a monk was taking away your individuality? No, actually. In the truest sense, no. It was actually aligning me with the pure essence of who I was. And that was a lot of fears. It's like, oh, if I become one again with the universe, then me as an individual will cease to exist and all that. And that's just an unenlightened fallacy, basically. It's a concept that's brought about by minds who don't perceive yet higher dimensions of understanding. However, a lot of your individuality, what Yogananda would call whim freedom, your freedom to eat Doritos, your freedom to drink a 6-pack of Coke or 6-pack of beer, your freedom to go to a movie instead of work, or your freedom to choose things that aren't really helpful to you. Yeah, those things start to be taken away from you. And if you really identify with that shit, then you'll have a sense that your individuality is being stripped from you. But this is actually, once again, this is the good news. If you really get the sense that you are a spiritual being having a physical experience, then you realize that physical experience can either enhance your path back to your spirit, or it can distract you from your path. And so the whole idea here is to eliminate the distractions and focus on those things that are going to continue to help elevate your consciousness. So hopefully that Looked at it. Tom Diama, yes, Diama was part of the Self-Realization Fellowship president for many, many years, about 50 years. Julie Macker joined, excellent. Good friend with me, facilitated me through my very first breathwork journey, and here I am now, partially because of you, Julie. Do you have children, Chuck? No, I don't have children. That's one of the requirements for being a monk was that you didn't have worldly obligations. That if you had things like children or a wife or that, then it was like, no, you have to take care of that. The idea of being a monk wasn't to run away from responsibility. In fact, Yogananda's guru, Sri Yukteswar, said, one can only renounce the normal duties of life if they're willing to take on those duties for the greater collective, right? So get that. It's like, so instead of, the duty, which is a noble enough duty to have wife and children and all that, then you're responsible for them, right? That this is your family and your extended family of friends and cohorts. But if you're able to renounce that, renounce ever getting married, renounce ever having children, that was only authentically possible if you were willing to take on greater responsibility for your world family. And that was really how we viewed it, was that we weren't married to any individual. We were, in essence, serving God. The nuns of the Christian faith would call themselves brides of Jesus. I never resonated with that so much, but that idea that that taking on that role was meant to serve humanity as a whole. Again, that's that whole service side of the meditation and service foundations that this work was all about. Do you need a spiritual master for guidance of spiritual energies? For that, I would again refer back to the idea that a lot of people have a lot of trepidation about accepting a guru. A guru is a very Eastern concept, and people who are raised in the East have a much easier time understanding it and accepting it. But for the people in the West, consider it this way, that if you want to play violin, you could learn to do it yourself, right? And how long would that take you? Probably a pretty long time. You might find some books, go on YouTube and try to figure it out. But if you actually had a master violin teacher, somebody who was first chair in the London Symphony Orchestra, or one of the most famous orchestras in the whole wide world, and they were your teacher, and they taught you how to do it, how fast do you think you would learn violin, and how good do you think you would become? So this is really the question, posing the question back at you. If you, if you want to guide your spiritual energies on a path that somebody else knows, ideally a spiritual master is somebody who's already been on that path, already realized themselves, or already in a very high state, so that they can guide you, they can help you. And of course, in the spiritual world, giving your loyalties over to a master is not a light proposition. You definitely want to do your homework, and you definitely want to know that, on some level, how human these people are, and how susceptible they are to falling. That we talked about that sex energy earlier. It's one of the things that can draw people back into lower base thinking and more individualistic, selfish thinking. As we start to get into that sexual energy, it can take us in that direction. And so, you got to watch out for spiritual masters who then, who you pledge your loyalty to, and then they start to manipulate you in different ways like that. And that's always been the fear of people, when they say, again, you give your you give your loyalty, you give your obedience to a guru, it's a two-edged sword. If the guru's not holy themselves, then that obedience and loyalty can get you in trouble. However, if the guru is of a high spiritual stature, you're basically giving up your obedience and loyalty to yourself, who doesn't know as much as this being, and letting that being guide you to become a better version of yourself. And so hopefully that's clear. And I can't advise you on one way or the other. That's always a personal decision. I made the decision at one point in my life to follow Yogananda as my guru, and that served me well. I did a lot of soul searching, a lot of background check to make sure that I felt like that he was a legit master, and here I am today. My life path is pretty much the answer to that question for me. I feel like through my association to Yogananda and his teachings, my life has improved over time, and so that really is the basis of whether you're going to find value from a guru, or if a lot of people go that path yourself. But again, you can climb a mountain and you can climb that path yourself, and sometimes that's the fun way. You explore, you're going to have adventures, you might get into a little bit of trouble, but eventually you'll get to the top of the mountain. Or you can enlist a guide, somebody who's been up and down that mountain many times, and they're going to get you on the safest path, they're going to get you on the quickest path, and they're going to get you there. So to there. Lila or Leela, how can one see the level of spirituality of a guru? That's the great conundrum, because if you're at this spiritual level, you can't perceive things at this spiritual level. So it's really, the best I can describe as an intuitive call. You have to answer that with your own heart. And techniques like breath work can help you to, in this book here, I've got my chapter has a method for answering questions. Do I take this path or do I take that path? Should I follow this person as a guru or should I not? And through that, it awakens your deeper intuitive sensibilities, and you get this sense of expansion, which is more of a yes, or you get the sense of contraction, which is more of a no. But that combined with good research, look at if you're really looking to follow a spiritual preceptor, which I both, advocate, but also advocate lots of research, because somebody who's really established on that path can really accelerate your growth. One of the ways you might do it is come to Rythmia too. Through the plant medicine, through the breath work here, people go away with definite insight and much more clarity about their life path, about their life partners, about their life associations. And so those are another way. Now, I wouldn't advise just going and taking mushrooms in the woods or something like that, thinking that that's going to give you the answers. But if you do it in a program like we've got here, which is very safe, very comfortable, and designed for awakening, not designed for partying or good times, but really designed to help you awaken, then you might find some answers there. Just watched a documentary. What one was that? Was that The Reality of Truth? So good questions, everyone. And that's, let's see. I got about halfway through what I was going to say, and we're about at the top of the hour. In fact, we are at the top of the hour. Just, I think, instead of going into all of the rote stuff that I had on paper, I like much more answering all of your questions. And because I think, once again, that in fact, this probably is a topic where I've gotten more questions from you all than some of the other breathwork related topics and such. And again, I believe that is the case because there's something intrinsic within us, this kernel of our spirit wanting to awaken, and the monastic path offers us the opportunity to do that, and with all distractions aside. And that being said, it's not the only path. It's not the only way. And for most of us, it really isn't a practical or realistic way, especially if you have children, if you have a wife or family obligations, those kinds of things. But as I said in the beginning, this really is a model for a higher age level of being. So you can take everything I said today and start to apply it in one way or another in your own life and begin to elevate your life in that way. You can begin to live monk-like, and this is why I say daily life monk style was the topic here today, that you can begin to live monk-like without having to fully commit to being a monk. And again, if you're married, you don't have to worry about that whole celibacy thing. And even if you're not, just recognize that there's a difference between sex for sensory gratification and sex for true expression of love and higher level connection. And go for the latter. Go for that higher level connection, and you'll find your sexual life being less filled with drama and discontent, and being more wholesome and fulfilling, right? And even in that, you may even find that sex isn't the thing that you desire the most. But that deep connection becomes more of what you're after, and that again is an elevation of your consciousness right there. So in that, I'm going to, let's see, a few more comments. My calling is to go to Rythmia. Excellent, Anne-Marie. And so you shall. And Carmen, you're on my bucket list. Excellent. So both of you. Chuck, did you know about ayahuasca before you became a monk? Good question. Great questions today there, Chuck, I have to say. I didn't know about ayahuasca. I did know about other psychedelics. In fact, it was back in high school that I had my first God experience with a psychedelic substance, and I didn't, up to that point, I had this general seeking nature, but I didn't really know what I was seeking. And then when that happened, that propelled me on the path to find it, to realizing there was more to life than the facade that we were given in society and the way things are run in general. So no to ayahuasca, that took me, I only found out about that about 4 years ago, but psychedelics in general, yes, before I was a monk, I knew that. And Mariana, thanks, your sessions are awesome, very calming in this chaotic world, beautiful. And actually that's a topic for one of my talks in the future, is keeping calm in turbulent times. So I appreciate that you gave me that feedback. And all of you for asking the questions. Whoops, Pip, how long is it suggested that you stay at Rythmia? A week, 2 weeks? We got a guy signing on now for another week. He's been here one, he's signing on for another. We got a guy coming in a month who's staying for a month. He's already stayed for a month last year, and he then came back for another 2 weeks, and now he's staying for another month again. So it really depends, but I would say, the vast majority of people stay for a week. People who have the time, the resources, and want to go really deep, 2 weeks would be good. So probably 1 to 2 weeks. Pip, if you're coming from Australia too, that you might consider 2 weeks as a way to ease in and ease back out, because it is quite a long trip for you to get here. And Dave, thanks, good talk, and thank you for listening. Megan. Wow, that's commitment. Yeah. I'm assuming you're talking about the guy who was here for a month. And thanks back to you, Pip. All right, guys and gals. You've been a great audience today. We'll catch up with you next week on the Friday version of Rythmia Live. Until then, namaste. I think my soul bows to yours. And do some prayers on your beads. All right, over and out.